we can't wait. We've had perfect preparation. We feel like we're perfectly positioned to cause a bit of an upset.
Mate, I'm comfortable with the situation. I just need a bit of time with my family at the moment. I think 3 months is a long time to be hanging out together.
You know, we're not naive to think that people aren't frustrated about us.
I've started to second guess whether footy is my sole future after I finish playing.
You don't want to keep having to miss the finals to make you make the finals the next year.
Your ticket into the heart of football. Welcome to the Breakfast Club's Inner Sanctum.
Yes, welcome one, welcome all to the Inner Sanctum on a Tuesday morning, and it's great to see across the desk for the first time in a long time the very physical being that is the massive man of the captain of the Melbourne Football Club, Max Gawn. Good morning, Max.
Morning, Half. Morning, Whitey. I'm back.
How exciting is this?
He's in studio.
When's Isaac coming in?
That's a good question.
I've got to speak to him.
He was actually coming in today.
We tried to get into D's, and he pulled out late. I need to have a chat. Yeah. We need to sit down and talk, me and Isaac.
It's because you didn't have the avocado on the waffle.
It must have been.
He's an avocado man.
He actually said he'd come in today, but I said,
He did say that.
Max is coming in. So.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Isaac. No, I sort of got lost on the way here. It's been a while.
I know, it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, year and a half.
Yeah, 18 months, I reckon.
You think of how many times we've spoken to you on a little Zoom screen, and all of a sudden you're here.
Very high tech. You got to open about 7 apps to get on.
It does take a long time to get through to that window, that little portal where we get to see you down the line. But it's lovely to have you in the studio, Max, and particularly after a weekend like you had for the D's. A fairly significant impact in the game you had, Max. 2 goals.
Yeah.
2 big snags, if you don't mind.
Was able to go forward a little bit. It's funny that before all 3 games, I've played 3 different roles in all 3. And as the first bounce goes, I'm presuming I'm playing full ruck the whole game, and it sort of changes within the game. And I'm glad I'm able to do that in my own football, and I'm glad Goody's got faith in me to move me around wherever he feels like he needs me at times. And sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes they need Jacko in the middle and need me to get out. So I'm going into Geelong this week thinking I'm playing full ruck again, but who knows? I could swing forward. We're still missing a couple of tall forwards that. I think they're playing their first VFL game this week, both of them, Wiedemann and Brown, so they'll have a nice little challenge to see which one we end up picking. We could pick both.
I just worked out he lives around the corner from me, Sam Wiedemann.
Sam Wiedemann,
He dropped,
Camberwell.
Yeah.
Yes.
He dropped I was walking the dogs one day, and he dropped a jar of tomato paste, from a bolognese type situation. And the back of the car, smashed it on the road. He's sitting there cleaning up, the poor fella.
Oh,
He
no.
was copying some grief from his partner at the time too.
He's gone full meat diet. So interesting he had paste.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So he's gone full. Everyone's going anti-meat, and he's gone full meat.
He's gone full meat diet and looks good.
Does he?
Yeah.
He's always a handsome man.
What does full meat diet mean? This is interesting.
Yeah, I don't want.
Listen to you. You piped up.
It's a porterhouse for breakfast. It's beautiful.
Right. Very interesting. Hey, I'm interested in that thing about the role you play. Who makes the decision to change it on the run? Is that you sensing something out on the ground? Is it Goody? Is it a combination of both? How does it unfold as the game unfolds?
Well, there's so many different aspects of my role that I can play, and the first part and the most important part is what I do with the ball in the ruck and be able to win a clearance. And if we're potentially down clearances or we just need a new look in there, then the option is to bring Jacko in or move track to the goal square and bring Tommy Sparrow in or something like that. That can change and get some variety in. Then there's also the other option if we're not there intercept marking down back, which they were at the start of the game. There's a chance for me to go forward and provide a bit more of a contest. And then there's also, like we saw against St Kilda that time where I was able to sit back in the D50 and that's and some aerial help and being able to help Stevie and Jake. So there's some different aspects, but the most important part of a ruck role is to make sure we're getting clearances, and that's what I'm thinking of going out. And if it's not working, then we can change things up.
So have you practiced that a lot in the summer, particularly going forward? It's something that you've done at times, but this seems to be a conscious change that you might spend a fair bit more time forward. Yeah,
it's still Luke Jackson's our forward and I'm our ruck at training, and throughout pre-season that's what we did. I've had little times where I've gone forward in pre-season training, but not too much. It's still, I mean, if we looked at numbers, I reckon I would have rucked 70% on the weekend, but against Saints it would have been about 95%. So there's still games where I'm playing pretty much the whole game in the ruck. still got to do some goal kicking practice. In fact, I've kicked them all straight all pre-season, and the first one I hook is game day, and I hit the post.
I did notice that with him.
At least you know that they're all going the same way.
Yeah, well, I had a few texts just saying just started out right, but if I do that, it stays right for some reason. No, look, I was disappointed at that first shot. I've bounced back. I kicked 2 from there, but I enjoy going forward. My love is ruck, and my love's clearance wins, and I love being around Clayton, Christian, Jack, and some of these new boys, and Jimmy Jordan and Tommy Sparrow as well.
Well, 24 disposals, not just rucking. You were getting a fair bit of footy too. 24, you had 28 hit-outs, I think it was, the 2 snags. It was a fairly significant impact. It was a bit of a tight battle too, the first half particularly, before they lost a few soldiers when you overran them late with your quality in your play. It was pretty tight. Were you a bit nervous at half-time?
Not nervous. We haven't been nervous really yet, which is a sign of maturity, because in all 3 games, teams have had run-ons, including, I think Saints kicked 6 unanswered goals against us at one point at the end of the first and the start of the second. And
they did.
The maturity coming in our group is no one is really getting too nervous. We know how we can get back into the game, and we stick to that, which is a sign of maturity for our group.
So is that the difference to the start to the year for this group, for this edition of the Ds?
There's a lot of different. No doubt in years gone by we potentially would have dropped one of these games, and so the maturity probably is one thing. Every game we're going out there at the moment, we're just trying to build respect and trying to change the perception around Melbourne Football Club and being able to compete for longer and being in every game. And what better challenge this week against the grand finalists from last year? So we were a little bit nervous. We weren't nervous, but when I think it was 5-2 quarter time.
Yes, it was. Yep.
Yeah, and Toby, to be fair, Toby Green kicked 2 of them from the boundary, and Maisie and Jake were probably a little bit off in their own reports, and they got back to what their best football was in the second and third quarter. Jake Lever ended up having a brilliant game, and we were able to turn it around, and then the third and fourth quarter we knew, especially with a couple of injuries to GWS, if we just keep going the way we're going, we should be able to run over them. Although they did kick 2 centre-bounce goals to start the fourth, which was slightly scary.
Well, it got to within a goal.
Yes.
Toby's kicked 2, and he was the only one that was going to break the game for them, and he thought about doing it, which was, I'm sure, a bit nerve-wracking. But they kicked the first 2, and it was within a goal. That was the most impressive part from my perspective, watching your performance as a team. You're able to just absorb that and say, right, no dramas, that's okay, and we'll go about our business from there, and dominated to win by 34 points in the end. Credit
to Toby, because he did it on Steve, and Steve, in my biased opinion, is probably one of the better fullbacks going around at the moment, and he goes from playing on Tabernar to King to Toby Green, and he'll probably go to Hawkins this week, so it's just the versatility that Steve has. But he did it on Steve, and it was slightly worrying in that last quarter, but we're able to peg it back, and Keziah Pickett was able to turn it on for us a little bit in the last quarter.
Keziah is creating some news, Max. Everyone's falling in love with this dynamic little man who does some great things, particularly inside the forward 50. His energy is fantastic. I saw him last week against Secura Live, and he was awesome. And his ability to impact the contest and go through contests at speed, be clean, and then execute is quite remarkable. He's making a big difference to your forward craft.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of small forwards come in, and there's still some guys that are around the club like Alex Neil-Bullen and Charlie Spargo, but Keziah ticks both boxes that small forwards try to have, and it's been extremely fit and ruthless in their defensive and getting up the ground to help out our structure, and then also having so much class around the goals. You rarely find someone that's got both those ticks. He's the 3 of them combined in Keziah, Alex Neil-Bullen and Charlie Spargo of our small forward role used to be the most rotated position, 1 in, 1 out each week, and I feel for the guys that aren't in the team at the moment, but the 3 guys that are playing some seriously good footy, and Charlie and Alex bring out the best in Keziah, and Keziah brings out the best in those 2.
So what we do this year is put some questions and opportunities to our fans, our listeners, at RSN927 on the socials, through Twitter and Instagram, and Matt wants to know a bit more about Cozzy. How does he do? The question is actually written like this. How does Cozzy do the things that Cozzy does? How does he do it? Is it just natural? Is he practice a heap of that stuff? Or what have you seen from him? How does he get to this point?
He's got a genuine work ethic at training. So I must say a lot of it is natural. And you don't want to ever get that out of his game. But he puts in a lot of work at training, and like I said, he's incredibly fit. He plays a lot of midfield time. He starts in a lot of centre bounces for us.
I like that dynamic. I must admit.
Yeah, it brings something new to the Melbourne midfield. We've got a lot of big guys in there, but to be able to have Cozzy in there and sort of buzz around. He's quite funny in our centre bounce meetings. He doesn't really give much. Just sort of says, "Where's the ball not going?" and I'll sort of take out that guy. But yeah, his work ethic would be the answer to Matt's question there.
Thank you, Matt.
Has he surprised you in what he's been able to do? Because he did have an unusual pre-season. He had some family issues or something like that. There, he was away from the club for a long time. He was training interstate. Then he sort of burst onto the scene the way he has. Tell us a little bit more about that and the sort of what you think of what he's been able to do.
Yeah, it shows his character. It's a close death to him, and to be able to sort of control what he can control. And he's actually, I might get it in my pre-season next year, but he was able to have a month off just before the season started and do F45 every day and then be able to be as fit as he's ever been. So
Is that right?
maybe F45, that's a plug for their company.
It is
but
a big plug.
Maybe that's the way to go. But he was 6 a.m. every morning in Adelaide. He did an F45 and sent a photo to our WhatsApp. And it was quite inspirational, to be honest. He was going through a lot over there with his family, and he knew he had to be there to support some of his siblings and cousins and whatnot. And to be able to keep training, he trained with the Woodville West Torrens. Jimmy Tumpus says he was training well, which is good.
Jimmy Tumpus.
And yeah, he came back and he showed that he didn't need to play a practice game. He could just come in and play round one. And first 3 games have been pretty good.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. See, I want to explore a little bit more about this maturity. How does it come? Does it come through a group just saying enough's enough? Does it come through just players getting a bit older? Does it come through Jake Lever and Stephen May coming to the football club? It's probably a combination of all sorts of things. But what could you identify as some of the key reasons why this maturity is starting to come to the footy club?
It's been a slow build. The Stephen May, Jake Lever point's a good point. I've never had defenders, and apologies to Matty Warnock, James Frawley and Jared Rivers. They're all great defenders, but I've never had 2 defenders I can trust more. And then that, to have trust down in your back half, and it's those 7 defenders, to be honest. You can add Neville and Adam Tomlinson and Jaden Hunt to that mix. It gives the midfielders a lot of trust, and also like just watching individuals and how they bounce back. Like the inspiration Tom McDonald's given this whole group, being on the scrap heap and coming back and playing round one and dominating in the St Kilda game especially. And there's just little bits of inspiration. We sat down at the start of the year and talked about what we want, and the hub was probably a blessing in disguise for us. We got really close, and for a young group that was eager to learn, the hub was probably at a good time for us, to be honest, and we were able to grow as a group. And I'm not going to go into exact details about what we talked about at the start of the year, but it's certainly this start, I stress it's just a start, that we're 3-0 has helped.
Because it's interesting, Half, that we've spoken to all clubs about the hub, and it just dominated everyone's lives last year. But it does appear that some clubs have really flourished as a result of the experience of the hub, and Sydney falls into that category. And we spoke to John Lemire, was it last week or the week before? He talked about how the hub was the best thing that ever happened because it brought a young group together. From what you're sort of saying is that while you didn't necessarily get the results last year, it sort of had almost like a residual effect.
Yeah, I don't see the hub as bad as what a lot of the noise from other clubs or other players or AFL have said. It certainly was able to grow our group. We're able to mature quickly and become closer. Definitely from a work point of view, we're already close off the field, but when you're in the hub, you're almost working non-stop. So to create those work relationships, yeah, we couldn't do it for 18 months. You couldn't be in the hub again this year for the whole 6 months, and that would wear thin. But that little 3-month period, and then to go away and then to come back, I felt like it was actually, it's almost planned the way it happened. And we're going to need some of that relationship stuff that we built towards the end of the hub, because it's going to get tough again this year. There'll be times where we're lost a couple quarters in a row, or lost a couple of games in a row, or injuries at training, and there's going to be times where the things that we learnt last year will come into action. And We've been good in January, February and March, the 3 easiest months in the AFL calendar, but we need to make sure we're good in July, June, August and hopefully September.
And that's the conversation that is happening at the moment. The teams that you've beaten, and it's come through off the SMS already, and people are talking about it after the weekend's win as well. The teams you've beaten have won 2 games between them, and out of the opportunities they've had so far. So is what we're seeing real? Is what we're seeing a real emergence of this team to be a finals contender, or is it just you beating up on teams that are not very good at the moment? That's the question that people will be asking.
We lost to Freo in Cairns last year, and they cooked our finals campaign, and that was a big game for us. So 4 games ago, Fremantle beat us by 15 points. St Kilda is a massive rivalry with us, and we always play them early on in the year, and it's a good sign to see how the 2 clubs are going. And we got them by 1 point in Alice Springs. That shows how close those 2 teams are as well. And GWS is always a good battle as well. I think we only beat them by a goal in the second last game of the year. So you can't say a 3-month pre-season is the difference between these teams. So I don't agree with the call that those teams are nowhere. Like Fremantle played a really good game round 2, and they're injury prone at the moment and got a few tools down. And actually, their big fella Meek, I'm really impressed with. I think he's a classy ruckman, and that was a pretty tough round 1 game for me. And then Sean Darcy coming back, and then obviously GWS had a few injuries during the game, but they still had some stars out there, and for example, Toby Green, who managed to kick 5.
We'll find out a bit more in the next 3 weeks. Well, you've got the Cats, the Hawks and the Tigers.
It's a perfect
MCG.
opportunity for us to play the grand finalists from last year in Geelong, and I watched that game yesterday. They're still playing some really, really good footy. They've got some really good players out there, and their midfield's the one. So Joel Selwood, I thought was one of the best first quarters I've seen from a captain in a long time against Brisbane. He's in genuine form, and Mark O'Connor will probably go to Clayton, you'd think. If the job was done by De Boer for a half.
Well, and that was one of the significant issues for the Giants on the weekend, because De Boer was doing a good job and Clary is getting a little bit frustrated at times. How's he coping with that? Because we're seeing a bit more of that this year. The tag is back.
It's funny. He was showing frustration signs, but it's as little frustration that he's ever shown being tagged. So once again, a showing of maturity for him. He went and played a different position, went and played forward, which in the past hasn't been Clayton's favourite thing to do. And he handled the tag extremely well. His numbers don't show that, and potentially wrestling on the ground with the ball for a bit doesn't show that. But the way he was talking within meetings at quarter time, half time, 3/4 time, and every centre bounce, he was not frustrated at all. So it's a show of maturity for him as well.
See, I disagree with that text message. I think the 3 games that Melbourne have won are a good test and show how far they have come, because they are teams that are around them. If you look at the ladder from the last couple of years, they are teams that are around them, and they are often the ones that you don't win.
We would have dropped one of them last year. In fact, we did. We dropped the Fremantle game.
Yep. So I reckon it does show that you have improved, that you've been consistent across 3 consecutive games against teams that it was 50-50 going into all of those matches. You've ticked the box on all 3 occasions. I think that has to show there's been improvement.
And within the game, we got tested in all 3 as well.
Yep.
The St Kilda game was the one I was most pleased with, because they kicked 5 in the space of 10 minutes and got out to a 3-4 goal lead. And against a team that plays Marvel Stadium really well, and we've had some bad memories against, to be honest. But to be able to fight back in that one was super impressive. That gave us confidence in the GWS one once they got to a 3-4 goal lead to be able to peg that back.
As someone said off the SMS, that was the last 5 goals St Kilda kicked, which we'll get to a bit later on with Jimmy. No doubt about that. Off the questions from our feedback, our listeners as well, Maxie, another one. Is there a demon that you trust to have a kick after the siren like Zach Bailey on Thursday night for the Lions?
Depends where the shot is. If
Let's
it's
go
anywhere
40 metres out directly in front.
Anywhere inside 40, not me. Our big full forward is not playing at the moment. I think Sam Wiedemann, if I put my life on it, he'd be able to kick it. If my life wasn't on it, he'd probably miss it. But if my life was on it, Sam Wiedemann would kick it.
He needs the pressure.
Yeah, he needs the pressure. Ben Brown hasn't really missed yet at training. Tom McDonald's a really good kick, so our 3 tall forwards would probably be the one.
Right, thank you, Cade of the SMS, who sent that through. I want to ask you about Ed Langdon. I thought he was brilliant on Sunday night. He dominated the wing, and he's that real connector between back and forward, which is the traditional wing role. He and Jaden Hunt had significant impacts in the game the other night, and they not only did they look like each other, they play like each other, and they're both in really hot form. What is it about Ed Langdon that you love?
They get grouped together, Jaden Hunt and Ed Langdon. They wear long sleeve tops and headbands, but no, Ed and Angus, who's playing on the other wing, have formed a really good combination for us. And yeah, Ed plays extremely high game time, is always at the top of our GPS running. But it's one thing to be on top of the GPS running. I've had teammates that are there before that don't touch the pill, but Ed's able to play his role. But then also his kicking's really improved. He's kicking goals for us, getting serious metres gained, and he's defending the ground really well for us. So, I mean, I'm not in charge of best and fairest voting or anything like that, but I'd say Ed would be a long way in front.
In the St Kilda game, he played 100% game time.
He
as a midfielder.
Yeah, he gets off. He really enjoys that. He makes sure he gets to the far wing whenever it looks like it might be time to come off, and he likes to stay on the ground. And the wing's one of the hardest positions to play, and any wingman that's play, I to be fair, I haven't, and I still think ruck's the hardest position to play. But Angus plays about 80% and is absolutely cooked, and Ed manages to play 100% and still looks like he can blow a candle out.
So, how do the high performance boffins appreciate that? Because they want to get players on and off, don't they? The boffins.
Burjo's a little bit different. He backs you in. I mean, to a point, the midfield's an incredibly tough position to play, and Clayton, Christian and Jack and these sort of guys are expected to get their rotation a corner, and same with Alex Neil-Bullen and Charlie Spargo on that high half forward role. But a role like wing or fullback or ruck that has proven to be able to play 100% game time, he backs his players in.
Can I speak about the ruck a bit? Because there's a bit of conversation about that after Thursday night's game, where Brodie had 64-4 hit-outs and the Magpies still lost. And then there's the conversation about the effectiveness and the impact of ruck hit-outs as a category of stats. What's your take on that, the impact of hit-outs and how important they are to a game? Is it more to it, or is that category alone basically irrelevant?
A hit out with a well balanced midfield just increases your percentage of the clearance from 50 to 70%.
Right. So
there's still a lot more to do to get the clearance, if that makes sense. And Brodie had I think it was 98% of the hit outs. But against a side that is completely roving, it's like an intra-club. I struggle in intra-clubs so much because the other team, one, they know our calls, and two, they're backing me over Austin Bradkey. And majority of them rove to me in a normal game, so they know my ways of doing it. And
morning, Austin.
we lose clearances in intra-clubs by 10 to 15. It's crazy. And it's a similar feel when you play a ruck where a team is not expecting them to win the hit. They're almost favourites because they can get on your back, and West Coast are really good at it. They're a side that Nat Nui wins majority of his centre bounce hit outs, and they win a lot of clearances from it. So the centre bounce is the one. Bull ups and throw-ins, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of mess. It's quite hard to get a perfect clearance, but you can increase your percentage with where you want the ball. If you want to surge it forward or if you want to go back. But centre bounce is the one, and Brisbane did really well against Collingwood to be able to nullify that.
So do you watch what the others do to get tips? Like Nat Nui's craft on Saturday night was quite extraordinary in the centre bounce, what he's able to do against Port Adelaide, who've got such a good midfield. But he was just putting it on a silver platter for his midfielders. Do you watch that and get tips, or do you worry about what you do?
I watch a lot of rucks. I'm very different to Nick Nat in the way we centre bounce, and we both have a very high percentage win rate in centre bounce, but we do it very, very differently. It depends who we're playing against, what sort of team we got. I love playing another good ruck because it means the other team's slightly aggressive as well. So, for example, when we come up against Nick Nat, they might have two guys roving his hit, which gives me a 1v1 on the other side, which I kind of like. But the art of ruck work is nowhere near dying or whatever the commentary was around Bucks. I just thought Brisbane did a really good job in roving. I think they had to go back to his 2019 prelim, which is almost 20 games ago for Collingwood, to bring another game that was similar to that for Brodie. So does that mean 18 of the 18 games in the middle there, he was able to ruck well and Collingwood were able to win clearances? So We won clearances on the weekend and we won hit-outs, but against Freo was slightly different because Freo played a really good role in there with Mundy and Fife.
Interesting. Off the listeners' feedback as well. Again, this is from Adrian. This is probably the more important question of the morning. What's the latest from the Tour of Flanders? I know you were talking about it. It was a top echelon when you talked about it after the game. With who was it? Fox?
Well, I was sort of caught between words. I was supposed to say echelon, and I said echelon because that's what a wind gap in the peloton is in cycling. When there's wind, they break into echelons.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
I hope so. So I was sort of caught in between sort of sports there, but I don't think many people have mentioned the Tour de Flanders in a post-match.
No, they haven't.
On-ground questionnaire, but no, I watched it. It's one of the. For those that don't know cycling, there's sort of 8 big races a year, and 3 of them are tours. So the Tour de France, Giro d'Italia, and then there's 5 one-days, and this was a one-day classic, and it was a surprise victor, Casper Asgreen. Who was given no chance when there was 2 left in the last sort of final group, and Mathieu van der Poel is seen as the Marcus Bontempelli, Paddy Cripps, like the next best thing. No one can beat him.
Right.
And Casper Asgreen, who's almost what's like a David Mundy type, has come. As no one's expected him to keep going. He comes out and has 90 disposals in 3 weeks.
Fantastic stuff. That's a good summary of the Tour de Flanders. Of course, there's some cobblestones there.
Yeah, cobblestones, hills with cobblestones, which is a combination of those two, make it incredibly hard.
What happened to Julien Alaphilippe? What happened to him?
Alaphilippe, when he doesn't see that he's going to win, sort of...
lose his limp.
And they had... Casper Asgreen was his teammate, so... I think he felt like he was not the favourite of his team to win, so he sort of just pulled up. Not many Aussies. Michael Matthews was, I think he was doing around 30th or something like that. He was slightly disappointed, but can we go back to one race, Milan-San Remo, which is another one of these one-day classic great rides. Caleb Ewan, young Australian sprinter, pulled out one of the best performances I've ever seen him ride. Unfortunately came second, but he was riding up the hills with some of the best hill riders going around, and he's a sprinter, so Caleb Ewan for a big year this year.
Okay, well, that's good feedback for Aussie cycling fans. Are there any Julien Alaphilippes in the Melbourne Football Club when things aren't going their way and they're not getting the love they deserve, they just sort of tank?
Well, it could have been Clayton this week, but it wasn't. It wasn't. He was able to keep fighting, unlike Julien Alaphilippe. What a name that is for cycling, Julien Alaphilippe.
I like it. I like it a lot. You've got the Cats on Sunday at the MCG. It is a 3:20 game. Check your local guides, D's fans, and get there to support Max and his boys because they are 3-0, getting into a very, very important phase of the season for them. Max, great to see you in the studio, mate. Congratulations on a great performance individually, but also collectively on Sunday night. Look forward to seeing another great win this week.
Yeah, hopefully D's fans turn up. We've got Geelong, Hawthorn, Richmond, 3 at the G. Our favourite time slot's at 3:20 on a Sunday. It's a beautiful time slot to play footy. It was bathed in sunshine yesterday. I'm hoping it'll be similar for that Sunday game.
Good on you, buddy. Nice to see you.
Thanks, boys.
And Max Gawn, the captain of the Melbourne Football Club.